The latest violence that we've witnessed in the occupied West Bank, to include Al-Quds in East Jerusalem, is an ominous kind of portent to what could possibly be coming down the line in Palestine, in historic Palestine, and in the Gaza Strip. What we saw on Thursday was an Israeli raid into the refugee camp of Jenin, in which there were 10 martyrs. There were several men and 2 children and a 61-year-old woman. I don't believe that there is any insinuation that any of those people were armed. The young men may very well have been resisting the occupation's raid. But let's be honest, since 1967, Israel has illegally occupied the West Bank and Gaza. The occupation is illegal under international law. They break the 4th Geneva Convention whenever the occupation moves in its civilian personnel and citizens into the occupied territories. There are now nearly 1 million illegal settlers in the illegal settlements, which are spread throughout the West Bank. And the result of this is that Palestinians cannot go about their daily lives without having to go through checkpoints, without having been harassed by the settlers, many of whom are armed. Settler violence is only second to Israeli army violence when it comes to the oppression of the Palestinian people in the West Bank. So we have these martyrs in Jenin. Then we have the killings in East Jerusalem of Israeli Jews. I believe that there were 7 people killed and another 7, possibly 10, injured. Where do we possibly go from here? If you have 1 million illegal settlers, they're burning the olive trees. There are apartheid laws that have 2 separate road systems, one for the Israeli illegal settlers and one for the indigenous Palestinian people. We have 2 separate laws. We have Palestinians under military law, and we have the illegal settlers under Israeli civil law. We've had Palestinians killed before by settlers, and there's been no recourse to the courts. Indeed, the settlers just killed someone, I think it was today, in the West Bank, and injured 3 others. Whether or not the shooting was provoked, whether or not the person thought they would be protecting themselves, the facts are that the settlements are illegal under international law. The settlers are armed, and they are illegally occupying Palestinian land under international law. They have no right to be there, and the sooner they leave, the better. Palestinians have the right to resist under international law. They are illegally occupied. They have the right to use any and every means necessary to resist that occupation. So what we have is the continued confiscation of Palestinian land, the continued confiscation of Palestinian waters. We have the continued repression of the Palestinian people, to include mass arrests. We have internment without trial under administrative detention. We have people who are watching their culture being appropriated, from the Dakba dance to falafel cuisine. Israelis who have no cultural identity within the West Asian continent have not only stolen Palestinian land, stolen their dreams, stolen their homes, stolen their businesses, stolen their olive trees, their arable land, and the water, but they're also appropriating their culture, including the keffiyeh, the traditional Palestinian scarf. What can we expect from Palestinians who are being crushed brutally, who are being murdered almost on a daily basis? Nobody in the Israeli forces is charged with these heinous war crimes. They actually prevent ambulances from arriving to the scene in order to take the injured to hospital, and a policy of letting those that they have shot bleed out. There are numerous eyewitness occasions where soldiers are seen to plant knives near the bodies of those people that they have summarily executed in order to try and claim that the people and the young men and indeed young women were trying to stab soldiers, which in many cases, if not all, is totally untrue and fabricated. We recently had a case at a checkpoint of a young Palestinian man shot in front of his mother beside their car, where he was allowed to die before medical intervention was allowed. So what we have is a repressive apartheid regime illegally occupying the West Bank and an illegal siege on Gaza, which doesn't allow in enough fuel, doesn't allow in enough medicine, doesn't allow people to travel out for medical interventions, doesn't allow the people who are married or getting married or have relatives in the West Bank that they are not allowed to visit each other. Therefore, in many ways, this is an inhuman imposition upon the Palestinian people, where they cannot see friends and relatives, they cannot attend weddings, they cannot attend funerals, they cannot welcome in a cousin or a nephew of the extended family where they're not allowed to visit. Recently, Palestinian prisoners who have been released, the Israelis have decided that there will be no homecoming, there will be no spontaneous welcoming from the community of those prisoners back home, some of whom have served up to 40 years in prison. Some of the men's mothers have died while waiting for them to be released. The Israeli illegal occupation has recently banned the flying of the Palestinian flag in order to crush the national aspirations of the Palestinian people. So what we have is possibly a third intifada, where people have decided they would rather die on their feet than be oppressed on their knees. Young men who throw rocks at tanks and armoured vehicles, which can do absolutely no damage, are being shot and murdered and summarily executed by the Israeli forces. So it's incumbent upon anyone who wants to see peace within the region that the settlements are dismantled, that the West Bank is unoccupied, that the Palestinian people have the right to national self-determination and sovereignty. And, you know, we will probably witness more scenes of settler violence and counter-Palestinian resistance to that settler violence. And possibly things will slowly go from bad to worse. But Palestinians might have small arms, but they don't have tanks, they don't have an air force, they don't have an army, they don't have bulletproof vests, they don't have helmets, they don't have a navy. What they have are young men and women determined to stand up for their national sovereignty, self-determination, dignity and rights. And who are we or anyone else to deny them that right?